Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's online conversation. Educate to Elevate is a new initiative from the NFCA to bring current topics directly to you, softball coaches and the coaching community nationwide, so that we can be a driving force for change. We're thrilled to bring together a group of panelists who have diverse perspectives and a voice that this coaching community needs to hear. We believe that this is just a starting point. We can bring the group together in many ways by sharing, by collaborating, and by listening. Thanks for joining us today, and let's get started.
Thank you, everybody. It's such an honor and pleasure to be with you tonight. It truly is, and I feel like I'm speaking to my friends and colleagues from the roots of where I got my start in college athletics as a softball coach. So it's just really nice to be with you all. I want to thank the NFCA for hosting this important conversation, a really important conversation, and thank you for having the courage to set this up and give people the platform and the opportunity to ask questions and have deep dialogue about an important subject. My name is Sharmell Greene. I serve as a senior associate athletic director and the senior woman administrator at Penn State University. I've been at Penn State for 9 years. Prior to going into athletics administration, I coached softball for almost 10 years. I had the opportunity to coach for a short stint at my alma mater at the University of Utah, then at Colorado State, Syracuse University, and finished my career, my coaching career at the University of Notre Dame, coaching under Deanna Gump, who is celebrating a tremendous milestone today. So I want to say happy birthday to Deanna. I transitioned into athletics administration many years ago because I wanted to make a difference. I realized that I wanted to have a greater influence on student athletes of color because there weren't many that looked like me in the sport of softball. And I saw an opportunity to transition into administration. And I felt that it was really important to aspire to be a leader in college athletics because at the time when I was coaching, I didn't see many people that looked like me that were making decisions for student athletes. And someone who played the game of softball, who played sport at a high level, who had the opportunity to play professionally and overseas, and be a woman of color. I've almost felt that it was a responsibility, it was an obligation for me to aspire to be a leader in college athletics if we were going to make change happen and if we were going to have an influence at the highest levels within college athletics and athletics administration. It has been a dream come true. I enjoy the work that I do. I enjoy working with the coaches that we have at Penn State, and I enjoy helping to make important decisions. But this is really a tough subject, and this is heavy. I want to be really honest. You're my friends, you're my colleagues. It has been a rough couple weeks for me. And I hope that we can have honest and authentic dialogue and conversation tonight, because if we're going to make progress, we have to open ourselves up to being vulnerable, to being honest about where we are, and being committed to make change happen, change for ourselves. And it starts with us looking within, all of us looking within, to figure out how we can make a difference and make a change, because we have a tremendous platform and we have opportunities every day to impact someone's life. Every time I sit down with a student athlete, every time I sit down with a coach, before I actually sit down with them, I ask myself, how are you going to make a difference? How are you going to make an impact? But it takes all of us. It can't be few of us that are wanting to do that, that are committing to do that. It takes all of us. So with that being said, I just want to say thank you so much. And I also want to give a huge shout out to We Coach. I've had the opportunity to be the president of the board of We Coach. It is a tremendous organization supporting women coaches. And I just want to give a shout out to my colleagues and the organization of We Coach that I love so much, and it gives me the platform to make a difference. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sharmell. Appreciate that. Next up on the panel, Nawala James. Coach James, you want to go ahead and give us your take?
How do you follow that up?
Very carefully.
But I also want to thank the NFCA for giving us this platform, for all of us that have some dialogue where we can share what we're feeling. These last couple of weeks has also brought a lot of emotions from myself. I'm the same way. I want to open up other opportunities for women and men of color to be lucky enough to achieve what I've been able to achieve. I feel blessed every day. I'm going to share a story with you guys tonight of, everything we see on TV has brought a little more emotion to me because I've actually experienced something similar to that's been going on while being the head coach at NYU. So for those who don't know, I'm the head coach at NYU. I started the program in 2015. I was at Pace University for most of my adult life. So I spent a long time there, and then I was also the head coach over at Lehman College for a year. While I had the job at NYU within my second year, my mom I was born in Brooklyn. So just to give you a little background, that's where I was born and raised. So I go back to see my mom often, and I'm blessed enough that she gets to see what I do, and I'm definitely proud of that. So, we got back late one night. I went to see her, spent some time, went out to the store to get food for us. And I noticed a car, dark windows, things like that. You see that all the time, so it's no big deal. But then I actually experienced four officers jump out, guns drawn first, before they even knew or saw who I was. And then when I turned, they happened to see the NYU softball shirt, and they said, "Oh, sorry, you just we had a description of someone, you resembled that description. Sorry about that, what have you," and that was it. That, it doesn't matter who we are or what we do for a living. It can honestly happen to any of us. And that's something that I wanted to share with anyone. I haven't shared it with any of my administrators. I haven't shared it with anyone. But with this group, it's very important that we have this discussion and we're open and honest, and, so everyone can say how they truly feel, because it is a tough subject to talk about. So it has been super emotional for me, and there's been a lot going on here in New York City. So I'm so thankful for the NFCA and to be part of this amazing panel of coaches and administrators to talk about a subject that it's long overdue. And I'm glad that we're hitting it head on so we can grow as a sport, as a nation, and have real change. And, I'm very grateful that we are having this talk.
Thank you, Coach James. Next up, Coach Perry. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give us an opening statement?
Well, it's hard to follow both of you guys, for sure. But, I definitely identify and echo, everything that you guys said before. And I'm Coach Tori Perry. I am the head softball coach at the University of Illinois. And to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, I believe I'm one of 2 Power 5 coaches, Black coaches. And, feel free to chime in, someone who distinctly knows that particular number. But it's just, again, I cannot say enough how important conversations of this nature, how important they are. And I want to thank you, Joanna and Carol, and you guys for, thinking, outside of the box and putting something like this together, just to give all of us as professionals an opportunity to get together and to put our heads together and to have honest conversations about, something that, again, affects our student athletes. And even if you think it's not affecting them, it's affecting them, and just playing softball, and growing up playing softball, it's a situation in this sport where you're always one or two or three of, in a room, of people of color in a room. And you're always, if speaking for myself, I guess I can't speak for everyone, but in my case, I was always, trying to navigate the room. And, lately, with the current climate and all the honest conversations that are going on about race and race relations, and how we as a nation will move forward, and how when we look back on history at this moment, the defining moments right now for race relations and people of color, I started to realize that I don't even really know if some of the aspects of my character and interactions with different people, if it's authentic, or if it's just a way that I've been taught to kind of protect myself, to move and to make sure that, people like you and that you're not too threatening, or, things of that nature. So it's really shaken me to my core, just trying to make sure that I am my authentic self. And for the first time in my entire life, I'm feeling free to be me and to speak freely. And, and it was a heaviness that's been somewhat lifted. And it's not fully lifted, obviously, because this is all a process, but, having opportunities like what you guys are giving us with the NFCA right now, having these opportunities to have these conversations openly and freely, it means more than you could, really even know. And your student athletes, they're listening, they're thinking, they're watching us, what we do and how we react in this moment. And in my life, sports has definitely been a catalyst for so many things. And I think, in this particular arena, our teams as coaches, we could take the lead. We have an opportunity to take the lead and to set a tone for unity, for education, and to just kind of help elevate and bring everyone together at this time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Coach Tyson, you are up next. You go ahead.
I am Tori Tyson. I'm currently the head softball coach at Howard University, a historically Black school in Washington, D.C. I just first want to say thank you to everyone on this call. It is, like everyone already said, it's been really emotional, but I think what's been the most emotional is that the most of my career, I have stayed silent to keep everyone around me comfortable. And also selfishly, because I wanted a seat at the table. And I figured the best way to try to find a seat at the table, or, was to almost not be seen or not be heard. I wanted to be seen, not heard. And this community, again, I've been trying to focus my energy kind of on that Sue Inquist thing, just, finding people who really want to change. And me and Tyra talked yesterday, because some of the conversations have been harder than others, but for the bulk, people like you guys, everyone on this call.
Something went wrong. Try again in a few seconds.
Sorry, everyone that's genuinely been trying to listen and listening to receive, not to respond or say, but I thank you, because this is the most free I have felt in my entire playing and coaching career. A little bit about my journey. I'm from Corona, California. I went to University of Nebraska. So I'm used to being the only one. Corona isn't like overly diverse either. Went to University of Nebraska, graduated, became a mother. So even being a Black single mom, I wanted to be like not heard even more, because that in itself is a stigma. And so then I went to Cal State Fullerton, started at Bethune-Cookman, which was like a dream. And I was obsessed with Veronica and what she was doing and the platform she was giving minority girls, even in a conference where minority student athletes, like our Black girls and brown girls are minorities in a historically Black conference. And to see what she did and just staying true to herself was so inspiring. But then I've always dealt with this like dilemma of pressure that we need representation in bigger places. So I got offered from bigger schools after my first year at Bethune-Cookman. And I remember crying. That was the hardest goodbye I've ever had because my heart didn't want to go. But it is too normal to see Black coaches only in HBCU. So I had to prove that I could do something outside of a historically Black school. I felt like I had to do that. I felt like our girls that looked like me needed to see me on a higher stage. So I went to Cal State Fullerton on a mission and found success there. But then it was still like, you haven't done it on a Power 5. So I went to Maryland, and then I went in, got to coach Chicago Bandits. And I was so grateful for Stacey Newman for giving me that platform. And then Howard opened up, and I remember calling Tyra. Genuinely, I cried for a couple weeks, called my coach Ravel, and because one, I wanted almost a release that is it okay for me to step down because we are so limited in numbers at higher levels. So it like I needed a release, but then I also feel a duty to be, to follow the trail of Veronica. And I need to also be at a historically Black university because if I won't, who will give them a true softball Division I experience. So like I'm trying to get emotional, but it's been my journey, and I don't know that I've ever slept easy about it, and I don't know that I've ever felt completely confident in my decisions. But again, I just want to thank you guys because this is the most confident I felt. I put a call out on a Facebook status that I need our softball community to fight through this, just like we fight through other things. We wanted more national attention, we wanted TV recognition, and we joined in on all of those fights. And I think that same energy needs to be given to this. So thank you, NFCA, and to everybody on this call for giving us that.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button there. Thank you, Tori. Coach Watkins, you're next. Go ahead.
My name is Olivia Watkins, but people call me Liv or Coach Liv. I'm originally from Florence, Alabama, born and raised. I am the assistant softball coach at Boston College, which I think I just started last year in August. So it's been a ride already. I started playing, I played with Coach Perry actually during my collegiate years at Western Kentucky. I played professional softball for 5 years. I actually coached under Coach Perry at the University of Illinois for 2 years, Dartmouth College for 2 years, and then now here at Boston College. So I think I'm the baby of this panel. So I think that I give like a different view. I'm not gonna lie, as a young Black woman living in America, I'm happy to see that everybody's joining together, but I'm angry. I'm pissed, but most importantly, I'm exhausted. This has been a very emotional time for me. 2 weeks, I lost my grandmother, not to COVID-19, just health conditions. And then you get, Ahmaud Arbery, and then Breonna Taylor, and now George Floyd. I think as a Black community, we have this collective fear of what happened to George Floyd. Could be your son. It could be your father. It could be, my brother. It could be my nephew or a cousin. And I just think about like when I was younger, your parents always like sprinkle this, magic fairy dust on you and give you the talk. Make sure that you take your hood off, make sure you say yes, ma'am. Make sure you say, no, sir. Make sure you keep your hands in sight. And I think that a lot of us have this safety net with the police. When you call 911, they're there to help you, but as a Black community, we don't have that safety net. And I know that there's things, just if you think about the history of America, it's deeper than that. So I'm happy to have this conversation with all, because I think it is something that we do have to start with. I think we do have to start with the conversation and normalize the conversation, so that way we can fully listen. And then I also think that we should educate and make sure that we're educating not only ourselves, but the people around us, so that we know what we're fighting for. I just remember when I was younger, and it was the first time I ever had a slumber party. And it was like a couple of there was like 3 white kids and 2 Black children, me being one of the Black kids. And we went to her grandmother's house, and it was like one of the nicest houses I've ever been into my whole life. And we're just outside just playing. And I was like around like 6 years old, and there was a little girl next door that was younger than me that pointed us out and singled us out and said, hey, look, there goes some N-words. And it just brings everything into perspective. Like, you know, that little girl heard that from somewhere else, and she singled me out, not for doing anything, just me playing, you know, in the backyard. So I think that is a deeper issue. But I do think that being together and then like working together to make social progress will also push for an institutional progress.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Coach Wiggins, if you would bring us home, it is your turn. You are muted, just so you know. Let's get you off the mute there. There we
Did
go.
I get it off?
Yes, ma'am. We're ready, Coach.
Veronica Wiggins. I've been with Florida A&M University since '86. I'm old school, and I'm here to make change. It's going to take us to be honest with ourselves, because I've run my program with the fruit of the spirit. We learn to love. There's joy. There's patience. There's kindness. There's gentleness. And this is what it's going to take. We know that there is racism. There is racism in our society, in this nation, in every nation. But what we have to do is be the one that want to make a difference, because it's called implicit bias. The system has been set. So what we have to do is be the ones that want to make change and be honest with ourselves. And it starts with us being, and I used to tell my assistant, because every year I evaluate myself. You're never honest with anybody but yourself when you're by yourself. So all I'm asking, if we don't do anything else with this call this time, is get to yourself in your own little where you meditate or whatever, and just be honest with yourself. And if you see anything that's got you on the fence or on the wrong side of the fence, then make a decision which side and what are you going to do about it. Until we take that stand, we can sit here and talk, because I've been through where I couldn't go over to the other side of the city until after 6 o'clock. I had to go in this door. So I'm saying if we really want to make change, and you're the young ones that can make change, because Tara said it, there's the old set, the middle set, and the young set. So we have to make a decision that we're gonna be the ones that say that this is about love. Let's love each other. Let's move forward. That, because when I saw an email and says this is about POC, and immediately I said people of color. But people of color is everybody except for white people. They are all ethnics. There are different groups that are in our circle, in our arena. Think about it. All I'm saying is we're going to do something today, then let's be honest and be open. It's not about getting upset. It's about letting everybody know that you're here to make change. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. We appreciate it. We have a lot of questions, and we will continue to ask as many questions as we can for the duration of our conversation. Panelists, if you are not one of the ones that are asked and you have something to chime in with, please feel free and go ahead and do that. But we're going to start. One of the questions we got was, what ways are you having your team open up about what they're feeling at this time? Coach Perry, let's start with you. What ways have you tried to encourage your team to discuss current events and what's on their mind?
I think we often, as adults or coaches, think we tend to take over and drive everything without consulting, with your intended audience. So I was very intentional about placing individual phone calls, kind of went through my roster and identified the people of color and make sure that I had individual one-on-one conversations with them and just kind of asked them, how are you doing? How are you holding up? How's your family doing? What do you think about this? How does this affect our team? What suggestions do you have? Do you guys want to have a meeting? Do you want me to make a public statement? Just asking them those questions. And then I also spoke to our captains and our kids that, were not Black, and talked to them. And what does this mean to you? What do you think? How do we join together as a unit, and make things right, make things better? So going off of their suggestions and recommendations, we did call a team meeting. We had it last Thursday. The structure of the meeting was from their ideas and suggestions. We had several young women that wanted to step up and tell their story, kind of similar to what we just did, as panelists. They kind of talked about, their view and some of the things that had happened in their life. And then we watched a video that was presented by them that just kind of talked about, what does it mean when this happens? Or what does it mean when someone asks you this? By, I believe his name was Emmanuel Ocho, is a very good video. So we showed that and we used the talking points from the video to just continue the conversation. But we established a room of, hey, just like everything else in this team, we're a family. So we want, everyone to feel educated on the matter, but to also feel open and have honest conversation to say, hey, I don't understand what's going on here. If you're a white kid on the team, I don't get it. I don't understand what's happening. It had to be, open, honest conversation if we were expecting anything to change. And then from there, we didn't want to just have a nice feel-good day and then move on about our business. We wanted to make sure that we came up with strategies, to help, continue to move our team, our university, our world towards unity and towards togetherness and equality. So we came up with a resource list that we put together. Some of it was generated from us, the coaching staff, but some of it was also generated from the team. So it's a resource guide to, unity and education. So we put that together and we've sent it out to the group. And then the team had a secondary meeting yesterday with the captains, and they brought in 2 alums that were roommates, Black kid from New Jersey, rooming with a white kid from a small town in Illinois, who, the white kid prior to coming to University of Illinois had never, her first time on campus was the first time she'd seen so many, different types of people, and had experienced diversity. So those 2 became roommates or best friends, and they kind of spoke, from their perspective, in that setting. And again, I didn't attend the meeting, but this is just kind of what I was told. But, they went further and had their own meeting and had their own conversation, which was great because from what I understand, a lot of the younger kids, felt comfortable speaking up in their team setting. So that's been really helpful for us.
Thank you. Coach James, let's go same question. How about your team? How are you handling the conversations?
So it's kind of ironic. As everything was going on, I actually had about 5 or 6 of my players reach out to me and just to ask, hey, coach, how are you doing with all this? So we, it gave us a chance to have that conversation. And I also asked, what do they think? Should we call a team meeting? And, I reached out to all of them as well. They said, coach, we're talking amongst each other. We do eventually want to have the coaches in the meeting, but right now we want to talk about things amongst each other. We have a very diverse roster, so they're spending a lot of time getting to know each other and each other's backgrounds so they can understand why certain people react to certain things. They understand everything that's going on. They wanted to make a statement out as a team. So they did that. They passed it by me to make sure it was okay. But at the same time, you know, I also said, do you guys want me to say something? They said, Coach, we will say it for the team. You know, we're all one unit, so we want to do this together. And, you know, they actually said, you know, we support you. We understand as best as we can. Some of us don't understand as much as others, but we're educating each other on the different things and why when we see the area where we go to school and everything that's going on. So they had that conversation, and at some point in the next 4 days, we're going to meet with the coaching staff with the players as well, just to see what they talked about, and then they can see things from our viewpoint as well.
Thank you, Coach. Sharmell, let's go back to you. You had conversations with various coaches at Penn State on how they can facilitate this within their own program?
Yeah, absolutely. Many of our coaches, some of them are on this, are participating in this conversation tonight, and many have reached out to just, you know, with being incredibly honest. Where do I start? You know, how can you help in expressing, you know, their own fears about engaging in deep dialogue, for the desire to really want to make a difference and make an impact. So we've given our coaches, you know, we've opened the platform for them to really just have conversation and reach out and talk about, you know, some strategies for how they can engage their students in this discussion. And similar to Tyra, you know, reaching out to their student athletes of color to kind of get a sense of one-on-one idea of how they're feeling, where, you know, how's their family, you know, what can we do to assist, and then engage them in the larger conversation with the rest of the team. But what we're learning, I had the opportunity before this presentation to speak with a lot of our Black student athletes, and many of them are feeling a lack of support from the university, and wondering how they can express to the university their fears and their feeling of not being heard. And so we had a wonderful conversation about how we can empower them to open up the discussion and from their perspective of how their experience at Penn State can be a much more meaningful experience, a feeling of being included, a feeling as if they are being integrated into the university, but not without losing their own identity and not having to assimilate to what the university is expecting everyone to act and respond and be. So right now, I think there's a lot of discussions going on, and I think more will come with the support from administration, with the support of providing our student athletes the platform to talk and have genuine discussion, because we are in central Pennsylvania. It's a rural town, not many people of color that live in central Pennsylvania. So our coaches want to figure out a way in which we can be more supportive, more inclusive of our student athletes of color.
Thank you. Another question that we've gotten quite a bit is intentionally shaping that team culture to be supportive. Are there things that you feel as a coach that are just crucial when it comes to cultivating your team and your culture to be supportive? Let's go, Coach Tyson. You want to kick this one off for us?
Yes, for sure. I think I'm going to talk more from being a minority student athlete standpoint. That I think when you go and you see these athletic kids, as we label them, I think it's understanding that beyond their athleticism, what can you serve them? Especially if you're going to bring them to where they're going to be one of the only ones on your team. I think that requires homework. I know that just experiences at many of the PWIs that I've been at, I think it's just setting that tone early, like the zero tolerance, because I had a Zoom call with Nebraska. And like I said, there's moments as the Black student athlete that you don't feel comfortable speaking because you also don't want to always be making everyone else feel uncomfortable. So you let so much go. So I think it's being aware, like little moments, those batters that we have, right, that we all use, like everybody, and it's like really nationwide, gives it like a Black name. Like somebody go get like Shaniqua or somebody, and like we normalize it in a way. Like, I mean, I really remember just like being okay, or, you know, and I think it's just acknowledging those moments. I think it's, again, I said this on our talk that we had, acknowledging just our hair and our culturally how that is. Like, I know that my coaches were really good about that I couldn't be available for last minute anything, because we're talking about a 6-hour process, and just respecting that. It's not me being high maintenance or bougie. I'm talking about 2 different textures and 2 different worlds, and being okay and not making me feel like I am being a distraction in any way to what they're trying to do. And I think it's one, just the awareness of it, but I don't think you can be aware unless you've done your homework. So being educated that bringing a Black athlete on campus, again, not what they can serve you, how you can serve them. And in those moments, kind of nipping it in the bud, because understand, if it's uncomfortable for you, it's 10 times more uncomfortable for us as the student athlete to speak up. And I always felt a responsibility that, like, I don't want it to be where they're like, this is the last time I can have like a minority, you know, on the team. So that puts you in this box that you can't always speak up on everything done wrong to you. And again, I was blessed. I mean, Miller carried shower caps, and she was very aware of like, hey, rain, we're worried about 2 different things sometimes, and not feeling bad about those things. So I think it's one, having open-ended conversations, but just being aware, like things that I think that we don't talk about, like the Black student athlete or the Black woman in general. You know, there is a stigma of like being the angry Black woman, but sometimes that's just our seriousness. So we're not always dancing and singing, and we don't always have to be the funniest one. And I know I felt sometimes like if I wasn't being the, you know, Cedric the entertainer that day, it was like I was making other people uncomfortable. I wanted to have my serious day, you know, like this is like my focus day. And I think just being aware and learning, and I don't think that any of that stuff ever intentionally happens, but I think it's just being aware of it, and you can't be aware unless you're having a ton of uncomfortable conversations. I know for my take, I think that that's kind of where it starts, and we are all a resource, and I don't think that there's anything wrong. We ask each other for hitting drills and pitching drills. I don't know that I've ever been vetted a phone call like, I have a Black student athlete and I want to give them the time of their life. I want this experience to be worthwhile. So I think that that's something that's extremely important.
Great information. Thank you. Coach Wiggins, what advice would you give to coaches who are trying to be very intentional right now on how they shape their culture and how they provide an environment on their team that's very supportive? Did we lose Coach Wiggins?
I'm not used to this technology
He's
here.
back.
Okay, most of us really know how we want to shape our program from the beginning. And our kids get our identity. They really feed into what we bring to the table. So, and if we want our kids to have if we want to have a diverse program, and we want everybody to get along, that it has to feed off of us. Because just like at HBCUs, when we get a white kid, she's in the same situation that if there's the only Black kid, and how do we make her feel comfortable? And I use sports psychologists, and I use as much as I can, because everybody are individuals, and everybody come from a different background. And no matter what, if everybody's the same color, you still gonna have differences. So it's about reaching out and finding ways to get them to buy into and to respect everybody as a value on your team. They have to respect each other and just learn that everybody contributes to the same goal. It's how you mold your team into what you want for that season.
Yeah, can I add to that, Coach?
Yeah, go.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, Coach Wiggins is a legend. I love you. You're such an amazing woman. I just want to add to that by saying, look, for non-HBCUs, our Black students know they're coming to a white institution. They know that they're going to, I knew when I went to the University of Utah that there weren't going to be many people that looked like me at the University of Utah. So I knew what I was getting myself into. What I didn't know was the lack of support ready to accept me and help me become the best version of myself. And that's what what higher education is supposed to be all about, right? It's supposed to help young people become the best version of themselves. And if I can't be authentically me, if our students can't be who they are, then we're failing them in that quest to be the best version of themselves, to send them off into the world that we know prejudice exists. We know that injustices exist, but I want my students to be ready to handle it and be able to navigate and turn the corner and be able to see it when it's coming their way so that they can shield themselves and not be damaged in the way that so many people of color have been damaged. So if you're recruiting a student athlete of color to come to a historically white institution, just like we call HBCUs, there's HWIs, historically white institutions, then by all means, you better equip yourselves with the knowledge and understand that the resources that exist on your campus. And if you don't have it on your campus, go find it in the surrounding areas. But if you are bringing a person of color to your campus and you're not prepared on that campus visit to demonstrate and show them that there are people here to help them grow and learn and be the best versions of themselves, then you are failing your student athletes.
Thank you. Olivia, a question for you specifically as an assistant coach. Are there things that you have found that are difficult? Do you feel like you're between, trying to keep the policies and culture of the head coach and also, your own benefits that you can provide to student athletes? How are you best able to provide support in your role as an assistant coach?
I think it's always important to make sure that you know what your head coach wants from you. But then I also think that you should also provide yourself as a resource for your student athletes. I'm big on connection, so I will be there for them whenever they just want me to, when they want me to just listen. I think that is a big part in, like, for example, how Coach Tyson said, do your homework. I think assistant coaches can do the homework for the people of color that are coming in. Like every school has some type of organization for minorities. I know when I was at Western Kentucky, it was BSA, which is Black Student Alliance. And that was something that I had before I even went into Western Kentucky. So I think that I really do think that as assistant coaches, you're often trying to fill in the gaps, make sure that you're touching everybody, if that makes sense. Make sure that everybody knows that they are heard and know that they are, that we care. But I personally haven't had any issues with supporting the student athletes, if that makes sense. I think I'm in a unique position where we only have one kid that is biracial. So they're looking at me for support and to work through this, if that makes sense. So I think that my experiences or the question, I don't know if I'll be able to answer that just because of my unique, position right now.
Of course, thank you. So this is only the beginning, many would hope, of conversations and actions. And so what comes next? You have the first conversation with your team, and then how do you continue it? How do you keep it going? How do you make sure that momentum continues? Let's circle back. Tyra, let's have you go, and we'll get everybody on this one. From your own perspective, what's the next step with your own team, or what you would suggest? Coach Perry?
Well, Olivia, as she mentioned, was one of my student athletes at Western Kentucky, and she just made me remember something that I'd kind of forgotten about. I also have, I think, Raven Dews on the call. She's one of my former student athletes, and Brooke Reed. Um, and they're both all women of color. But I actually, at Western, would have we had two African-American Black professors come by, and there was a program on campus that helped connect minority students into other areas outside of sport. So she would come in at the end of our those two would come in at the end of our practice and speak to our young women and invite them to different events or make them aware of different events on campus. And then they would connect them into the Black Student Union or Black Student Association. And then it brought me back to when I was on campus at LSU. Trina Pill is on this particular call, and I was her student host back then. And we connected, and I took her to an event, and showed her where the Black Student Union was on campus. And just those small things really help you find your tribe or find your group or connect and make your experience that much more diverse, or just a better, well-rounded experience. And you find your family outside of your team, your sports team, and it really helps everyone, as far as your comfort level. So just so moving forward, connecting your team into your group, and most of your campuses probably have a group that if it's not athletic based, it's probably university based. So helping those young women actually see, the people of color, professors of color, or whoever is the administrator of that group. At U of I, we have an Empower group that is geared towards helping minority students and hearing their questions and supporting them. We had that particular administrator on our team call, and he has encouraged them to continue with the Empower group. So just like, if you're not, let's say if I'm a white coach and I don't really know where all these things are, find out and just connect them in, connect your athletes of color in, and it could be a great thing for everyone if you're able to do that. And one more thing really quickly, our AD, Josh Whitman, has been an amazing leader. And if you don't know who he is, he's a white male, about 41 years old. And he's just been so transparent, and it is so refreshing just to have someone in his leadership position to just be as open as he is. He, openly says, I was sitting in my own bubble. I didn't really know what was happening. I thought I knew, but I'm gonna, lean on, everyone here and ask, for help. He even told us his story of, just growing up in Indiana and being in a small town. And the first time he was in the locker room, he played football at Illinois. First time he was in the locker room at Illinois, that was the most Black people he'd ever been around. And it was in his entire previous 18 years, it was doubled. His experience was doubled in the locker room on that one day, his first day of college. So, but he's been great. We've had, peaceful protests and rallies in our area, and he and his wife have come out. He's been very vocal in his statements and really walking the walk. So that would be the end of that, just walk the walk. A statement is great, but it's only a start. It's only the beginning. This is not going to be over in, one meeting, one statement. It's an ongoing, I think, mission or a passion that, we're in the people business. So you should want all people, everyone on your team, to have a great experience, and you should do everything in your power to make that a possibility.
Thank you. Coach Tyson, let's go to you next. What are your plans to continue the conversation, and how would you suggest that others do the same?
One, I think being direct in the meetings. I know that I've had a lot of minority student athletes reach out to me on the side that are at PWIs that were very uncomfortable with their conversations with their coach, because one, it was a couple days too late, right? They had already been wearing it and kind of battling on their own. And then when it was addressed, it was kind of tiptoed around. So I think being direct and using the words, even if it makes you uncomfortable, racism, like that is what we're talking about, and not like so general. I think that those direct statements kind of help, because if you don't say it out loud, it's going to manifest itself in other ways. So I think we need to be direct and intentional when we do meet with these student athletes. My second piece is I think we need to continue to elevate the voices of our game that are actually in the trenches and dealing with this. And I think that that's something like this platform does. But I know my coach had me on, it's okay that you can't relate, but it's not okay that you don't try to find somebody that can, because there's plenty of people that can. And so reach out. And if that's them hopping on the Zoom call to kind of help steer the conversation, it is worth it. And my third thing is I just want to note that even if you are, I know with my student athletes, right, I'm unique because I have predominantly Black student athletes, but they were in the emotions were very heightened, but everything is kind of goal oriented. And I told them everything you feel right now, one, I don't want them to live in the silence I did. So I encourage them to use their voice and represent themselves in the best way possible. I never asked for their silence because I've stayed silent long enough and there has not been change. So I've encouraged them to use their voice and represent our university and themselves. But for my white student athletes, I've encouraged them even more, because I think privilege is power, right? When we talk about white privilege, it is power, but I only think it's wicked when it's used incorrectly. I think that it could be extremely empowering for I told Shayna Swanson's one of my white student athletes, and she wants to be a politician. She is going to be a world changer. We need her to get it. I'm encouraging that. And so if you do have a predominantly white team, it may not seem like it is affecting you right now, but in your group, you have a world changer and a policy changer, so that these conversations are necessary, because again, they are our future. And I think that we are all in unique positions to empower them to do their history, but also to be inspired by this, so that our future kids aren't talking about this, and softball is going to be better for it.
Thank you. Coach James, you talked a little bit about next step. Any other suggestions for coaches who are continuing to take that path with their own teams?
The biggest thing I would say is let's not do what's happened many, many times before and just sweep it under the rug like it's not there, and just say, oh, this is going to pass, and not address it. I think the kids today, they're great at that. I think they want to be diverse. They love that. They accept that. They embrace that. They love to make changes. They're big with protesting, and they want to see change. And this is a great opportunity for us to help them they have that platform. Their voice is important. And we need to really, a mentor of mine always said for us there's a reason we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's to listen, and then we speak. So you know what? Listen to what they're saying. They're already ready to help make this change. So it's up to us to say, it's okay for you to say how you feel. And like Tori said, sometimes, and I've let a lot go past myself, they shouldn't have to. Let them speak how they feel. It's important. The worst thing we could ever do is hold something inside. And they know that there's wrongs out there, and they want to make change. And I think a big reason it's happening is because they're out there having that conversation, and they're in the middle of it saying, no, this is not right. Let's make change. We're all human. We should all have the same opportunities. Let's make sure that that's there for everyone. And we all have student athletes that are going to be world changers. So you do have to tap into those individuals, and they're the ones that's going to help lead your team where it needs to be. And you know what? We learn just as much from them as they learn from us. This is a great opportunity for us to really see that happening.
Thank you. Olivia, I see you shaking your head. And what are your thoughts? Same question.
I love all the information. I'm nodding because I'm like, yes, that is right. Yes. But just how Coach James was saying, like, we can learn a lot from our student athletes. I think this is a unique opportunity for us to actually listen to them and say, this is how I feel. These are my experiences. What are some ideas that you think that we can implement going forward? Because I think a lot of these kids do want to make a change. So I think giving them an opportunity to voice their opinions and to voice their ideas and help them along the way, I think that also can, that will mean a lot to them and empower them to make a change.
Thank you very much. Sharmell, let's come back to you. How about continued plans on your campus dealing with your coaches to keep the momentum?
Yeah, I think what's really important for our coaches right now is to understand their own prejudices and biases. I think you got to figure out where you are right now as it pertains to these issues, and sit with it and wrestle with it and get uncomfortable. Be okay with being uncomfortable, and then figure out how you're going to change it, because that's really important. Being honest with yourself. If you're not honest with yourself, you can't be honest with your student athletes. And if you're honest with yourself, then you can begin, making change happen and having the discussions that are so critically important, because your student athletes are waiting for you to have that dialogue. No one expects you to have all the answers. No one expects you to be able to fix everything, but certainly you got to be comfortable with having the conversation. And then surround yourself around people that will help challenge you, help challenge your biases, challenge your prejudices, that will help make you better. We're always growing, we're always learning. And when we stop growing and learning, then we might as well just get out of the game. We might as well just move on to something else, because then we can't be an influence for our student athletes. So commit to growing. And if you have a team that is all white and a staff that's all white, then be intentional about making sure that you expose them to difference. Making sure that if you have a book club, select books that are written by Black authors. If you're watching movies, watch movies that have a Black cast, or a cast of color. If you're bringing in speakers, be intentional about bringing in speakers of color. Because if they're only being exposed to other white people, then they think the world is just white. And we have an obligation to expose them to what the real world looks like, and to be comfortable with difference and being comfortable with being a minority. I've had to be the minority my entire life. I'm comfortable sitting in a space with all white people. I've had to do that my entire life. So we got to be intentional about putting our white students in those spaces where they are uncomfortable, and then they learn to become comfortable with that.
Thank you, and I truly appreciate the segue, because I'm going to get to Coach Wiggins and let her go as well. But another question that I want you all to think about that we get to is how can we create a racially conscious, inclusive environment on our team and staff that are predominantly white? So we're going to kick around to that question. But first, Coach Wiggins, what are your thoughts on sustaining the conversation, and then anything you would want to add to a team and staff that is predominantly white trying to create that environment?
You guys have to be a little patient with me. I apologize. We all have leaders, and our kids, if you remember the old saying, when children have a fight or whatever, and then they'll make up and move on if parents stay out of it. So, and bringing it in that perspective, our leaders have probably reached out, your captains or whatever, because they understand what's going on, and your team usually get together without coaches now, and once they've gotten together, they normally come back to coaches and want to continue things, and they have ideas. Most of them bring ideas of what they want to do, and just like everybody was saying, if we listen to them and if we get the right professionals or experts to help them, then it will continue. Because just like I said, it's not something that's going to stop right now. This is something that we're trying to make change for lifetime. This is a life habit that we're working on. So the kids already know what they need to do, and adversity brings strength to a team. They automatically know how to come together, and they will come and protect each other, and they'll form what they need to. They'll come together and come back to the coaches and tell them what they want. This generation know how to speak up.
Thank you, Coach. Tori, I think you had something for the second part of the question here. And I know it's 9 o'clock, but I am not going to be responsible for shutting this down. So we're rolling. And if anybody needs to go, go ahead. But we got 200 people here listening, and I think it's great. So Coach Tyson, go with it.
Just for the inclusive one, at one of my universities, one of my stops, I know that there was a sport that we shared the office with, and he was so big on, like, you know, we're not listening to any of their music, or, you know, and I mean, no surprise, he didn't have any Black kids on his team my entire time there. And I think that music is such an inclusive thing, right? I think that just like sports. And here's the thing, I'm like getting older. I know, like 30s now, but I'm getting up there. I don't even like listening to everything. But one thing I did at University of Maryland, which was, you know, predominantly white school, is every day I like Tupac. I've studied Tupac since I was like 8, and I think he was ahead of his time. And I would make them, right? I had this girl from Arkansas who was like, went to school with like no Black kids coming in. Like, I have them, like, I literally would record them just being uncomfortable, and they'd have to say a lyric that could resonate with them. And it was funny and it was humorous, but at the same time, I think music can be so inclusive. And I think that you got to meet them where they are, right? Like, I would listen to their country, and they would make me listen to a country song. And then I would tell them they had to come to practice and just give me a Tupac lyric that was passionate and something that they could relate to. And I mean, I still have them, so I will totally share it, but it's something that's light, but it was just me meeting them where they are, because me being a Black coach, for some of them, I was the first Black coach they ever had. So I also had to make them feel comfortable with that barrier as well. So, and me, I've always been one that I could listen to anything. And so it was cool. It was, some days we were listening to the best country had to offer, and other days they were listening to music that I felt could inspire them. So that's just something that I think that you can include. Your playlist at practice, it affects everybody's mood, and making everyone feel included on that, and everyone feel, you can do that and make everyone feel included and safe.
Thank you very much. Coach Watkins, let's go over to you. What are your thoughts on ways to take this conversation to a predominantly white team, white staff, and be inclusive?
I think that exposing them to differences is important. I know that there's a lot of organizations like RBI. I don't know if you guys heard of RBI before. Natasha Watley Foundation, she started a foundation just for kids that didn't have the opportunity to actually play because of just financial reasons. Last year I hosted a free clinic for anybody who wanted to come out in my hometown, and it was great. But I think that when you are in a unique position where, like for me being the only person of color, I think that, you know, making sure that you're exposing them to differences, like this is how somebody else's life is, or, you know, going down to maybe inner city kids and like talking to them. And BC had a town hall discussion last week, and it was just a conversation for the student athletes to just talk about their experiences, talk about their feelings of like what's going on in the world. And there was a student athlete on the call that said something about she student taught at a inner city, like South End of Boston, like low economic school, and she was able to take that class to a basketball game. And she said that those kids were just so happy and talked about it for a full year, and it just made their lives. So I think that, you know, exposing them to differences can also make an impact on them and make an impact on how they see the world. Because if they don't, it's just like everything that they do is just one color, and it's only one story, only one side, and that's not the case living in America. So I think exposing them to differences is a good start.
Thank you. Coach Perry, your thoughts?
I would kind of refer back to my story about our AD. Like, he's shown a great example of leadership, just being honest and telling his story has kind of helped set the stage and set the tone. So as the coach, be that person, you know, in front of your team that's, you know, educating yourself and being the example of what you would like to see as far as change. And I agree with what Olivia said, find someone in your community, a minority kid or person, that you can kind of adopt or mentor and expose them, to your life and to just all the different things that collegiate sports and athletics has to offer. Obviously, within the NCAA rules and legally, but, maybe find a little kid. I'm a part of the Big Brother, Big Sister program. I always get, request a kid, a Black kid and try to show them around and bring them around the team and around the girls as much as possible, just to mentor them and influence their life, even if it's just one person. But you can do the free clinics like Olivia said. So just kind of, we'll reiterate some of the things that were already brought up. Thought they were great ideas.
Thank you. Nuala, how about your thoughts? What would you suggest?
Kind of what Tyra and Olivia have been talking about. For us, what I do every year is, predominantly my team is white, so I sometimes I share some things about my life with them. One that lets them see the human side of me, and why sometimes coach reacts a certain way to something because they understand more about me. But I also get to know them as well, and I'll get. We have an alumni that works at an inner city school, and what we do, a middle school. So what we do is we'll have them come watch practice, and then after practice, interact with the girls. So the girls get to talk to them. Those kids share their life stories with the girls, and the girls get to appreciate that, you know what, they are role models and they can help a kid from anywhere. They're the person that those kids may be looking up to. You don't have to come from the same background or anything, but they're learning about those kids and how they're being brought up, how they may not have the equipment or anything and can't afford it, but they really do love this game and want to find ways to play it. And we try to find ways to say, hey, coach, this is ways you can get equipment. I've gone and talked to a couple of different vendors about donating stuff to them. So that's one way. So those kids have those resources to work on their games, and we'll do like a team clinics with them as well. And we invite them to a game so they can see what a collegiate game is like and have that experience, because not enough women and men of color are exposed to those activities to know that, you can be there too. You might feel like you don't have enough resources, but there are people out there who will take that time and effort and spend time with you, teaching you the game. I'm thankful someone did that for me, and that helped me get what I consider getting out of where I grew up. I wasn't a statistic, to say the least. So give those kids an opportunity, knowing that no matter where you're from, you can get wherever you want to, or you set your mind to it, and the right people invest in you. So we make sure our girls understand that as well and get to see that side. So they have a really good appreciation for everything and everyone who they may encounter and meet and learn their story.
Thank you, Coach. Sharmell, you talked about this a little bit, but if you give us a little more information with the coaches you're working with. You talked about a predominantly white area that Penn State is in. What would your suggestions be to create that inclusive environment with those teams and those coaching staffs?
Yeah, I think I've said this, not want to sound repetitive, but it starts with dialogue. It's just having conversations and really being genuine in your interest and desire to get to know your student athletes of color, getting to know their families, getting to know what challenges they face, and then figuring out ways in which you can be most impactful. I grew up playing the game of softball. I loved the game, and I didn't have many mentors in the game that were people of color, but the mentors I had were genuine and authentic, and they cared about me. Joe Evans, who was my college coach at the University of Utah, she's someone that till today, is someone that I call my best friend. She is the influencer that, led me to want to pursue coaching. And so that influence is very strong, but it starts from the level of caring. And, if you start from that, I think this whole presentation started off with loving each other, right? I think someone said, we got to love each other. Love is an important piece, but genuinely wanting to understand and have honest conversations is certainly the most important if you want to make a difference. And that's what we're doing at Penn State. We're allowing for dialogue to happen. We're allowing for our coaches, our teams, our leaders. Sandy Barber has been a tremendous leader in creating a platform and for our coaches to talk, our student athletes to talk, And it's been remarkable from that standpoint, but we got to make change happen, people. We can't be sitting here 2 years from now having the same conversation, not talking about some of the successes that have come out of this conversation. So we all have to commit to making a difference and making change happen. And it starts with all of us.
Thank you. I'm going to get you on staff for just segue purposes. If for nothing else than segue purposes, Sharmell, because you just keep hitting the next question. So this is one of my favorite questions that we have. How do we validate the thoughts, feelings, and reactions of our team while still teaching them to check their privilege? And I love this. I love this question. Tyra, I'm going to let you start because it's hard and I like to pick on you a little bit. So Tyra, I'm going to let you go first on this one. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a tough one, because you don't want to isolate your white players either, So I think it's got to come from a place of love, as we've been saying. Just making sure that that all players, your white players, your black players, know that we're all in this together, and that the changes that we're looking for as people of color, the unity, equality, it's going to help the whole picture. Like it's going to be good for everyone. So just kind of education, knowing where we come from, that it's not just, okay, why are Black people complaining now? She looks fine. Just knowing that, there are things that happen in the Black culture. Like something that struck me when we were preparing for this particular panel is that I've talked to, a lot of people over the past week, Black people, and from different, all of us are from different age groups, different areas of the country. And every single person had a story about how they were either called the N-word or, my dad was arrested, wrongfully. And people that know my family, my dad is hardworking, head down, and it was completely, it ended up being dropped because it was completely just, out of the box. But just, it struck me that how many, Black people had these stories. So just making sure that our white brothers and sisters know that it's not just complaining, like this is real, like this is really happening. And this is something that's really going on. And, engaging them and, imploring with them to join the fight and helping them know that, it's going to take all of us together to make the change that we need, and that the change is good for all. It sounds exclusive, but it's really very inclusive, and it's really the best thing that we can do for this country. So hopefully I answered the question, but that's kind of where I am with it.
Thank you. Coach Watkins, let's go over to you. How would you suggest a way to teach the student athletes to check their privilege while still trying to validate their feelings?
I would say the same thing as Coach Perry. But I think that making sure that you educate, like even preparing for this meeting, I'm just like looking through notes and just looking at the history of America, and it's like it's crazy, and it blows my mind just to think about all of the things that the Black community had to go through. you're brought to America, you're stripped of everything, your money, your language, everything. And it's even to this day, like being of color, I'm just like still looking at it. I'm like, I can't believe that this happened. And, now looking at it today, it's like, this is why this is happening. So I think it is important for you to educate so that they can see themselves. And if they're unable to see themselves, then just make sure that you're still offering them to engage in some way. So hopefully that they will come around. But I do think that it is for the better for all. And we're not just saying like, it's all for the Black community. It's going to make the world a better place, period. So I think that educating is key, but also giving them an opportunity to voice whatever feelings that they do have, so that way they're also heard as well, can also be important.
Thank you very much. Coach Wiggins, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Education, but also taking away the fear that they're losing something. You gotta reassure that, just like everybody's saying, it's best for everybody, each community, each ethnic group. But the fear of losing something has put a block in everybody's way of should I or should I not. And that's the first thing we have to get the whites to see, that we're not here to threaten or take away, but all we want to do is be on the same plane or the same level, so that we all can have the best opportunity we can have. So just getting everybody to understand it's not about taking something away, but also just everybody gaining.
Thank you, Coach. Coach Tyson, your thoughts?
I think that it starts with one, even the coach themselves acknowledging their privilege, right? It starts there, and I know that I have great coaches around me that have brought me along, right, and helped me and giving me opportunity, but acknowledging that so that you feel, you feel authentic, trying to describe privilege to your athletes, like it's acknowledging your own. And I think that the best way to validate, or for your Black athletes, is one, just to change your behavior. And I think that kind of what Wiggins said is that if you can explain to your athletes that are not Black the power in their privilege, and then not be such a wicked and used in such a wicked way, I think it could be extremely constructive, that your power, your privilege could be something that changes the world, that, that leaves us in a better place. I think that that's empowering. I think it's inspiring when you describe it that way. So I think it's extremely important. I think a way to show them privilege, like something I've thought about, is we're all saying we want to be forever changed. And I know that for us, we go and we try to get, guarantees to go play places at nicer universities. If you want to give them a realistic view of privilege, I'm opening a home game at Howard, right? And come live a day, right? Because I'm privileged. I realized I was privileged, like just a fight for balls, right? I'm thirsty for balls. We're on a football field. We practice on a football field. So if you would like to show them as well as tell them privilege, I'm opening a door. I have no guarantee, but there's no guaranteed money, but I think it would be worth their while. And if we're saying that we want change, then let's act on that. It's not we're probably not gonna help your RPI right now, but it might be worth a little detour when you're on a trip. Right now, I didn't say in the future, but right now it may not. But I think that it could be life-changing and something that they need to see.
Thank you very much. Coach James, your thoughts?
Education is the most important thing. Like those before me said, if you can't recognize your privilege, it's going to be very hard for you to teach your student athletes how to recognize theirs. I know what my privilege is because I've been through where I had nothing, so I can recognize my privilege. So I'm out there teaching everyone that, you know what, I went from something to nothing. So I know I'm very fortunate to have certain things that I have. So the thing you want to do is start the conversation. Trust in your student athletes, and you pick the right students and the values that you have, and they have the same values that you have. That conversation, if you let them go with that conversation, they will take it exactly where you want them to take it. You have to have the trust that you did the right job recruiting those kids, that you recruited the type of kids that you wanted to have that type of environment. So I would say trust what you recruited, and you should be able to have that conversation, because when we recruit kids, we get to know them as people first. So if we're doing that, we know how the conversation is going to go. And the biggest thing is to educate ourselves, so that when we are in that conversation with them, if we do see it going a certain direction we don't want to, we have that education to steer it right back to where we need it to.
Thank you. And Sharmell, let's get your take on this.
I think everybody had great comments, and I would echo what the panelists have expressed. I would just say that, privilege isn't a bad thing. Coach Wiggins, you said it really well. It's like, so when you use your privilege to diminish or to discriminate against others, then that's when privilege becomes a bad thing. But if you use your privilege to do good in the world, to help bring people along, then so be it. It's a wonderful thing. I have the privilege and honor of working at an amazing academic institution where I can influence so many young people. I'm going to use that privilege to continue to do that. And I would encourage everyone else to do the same. So I just think that, sometimes in society, we create these, descriptions to words that then the words become taboo. And then we no longer can speak freely about being privileged. Just recognize your privilege and recognize that your path as a white person is a much different path than a person of color. And that's okay. But if that path is not bringing other people along, or not helping people of color to really thrive and excel and be supported, then that's when privilege becomes an abuse of power.
Thank you very much. You might notice in the chat, Coach Watkins just shared a link. The panelists combined on some resources for people that might be looking for those. We will continue to collect resources that are mentioned in the chat as an NFCA staff and adding to that document, but wanted to get that out to you in case you do have some time constraints so that you can reach that. A question from the chat, and this is verbatim. I'm going to give this verbatim. What about an old white man coaching a very diverse team of travel ball student athletes? How can this gentleman help his players, and what can he do? First of all, thank you for the question. I love that. And secondly, let's get after this question a little bit here. Coach Tyson, how about you start this one off?
Coaching a diverse set, like I said, I think it's being able to ask them questions. I don't think that, I know for student athletes and the ones I've spoken to, is if you feel, coach them like you would coach anyone else as far as the game. I don't think that it's trying to change positions or put them in a certain box. I think that that's first and foremost. Just, you wouldn't, with any other position person, right? If this student athlete is telling you they want to be a shortstop, train them to be a shortstop, not telling them that they're going to have to flip to a speedy outfielder or something. I think that it starts there. Let them thrive in where their vision is and their passion is. If a college coach goes to tell you otherwise, still allow them to see the power in their choice. That doesn't mean that they have to go play somewhere else. That might just be that school. And I think that that's something that kind of happens at the youth level. Just because a bigger school sees you in a different position, you are now a center fielder slapper. That doesn't have to be your dream. That doesn't have to be your route. And I think this is so cliche, but just love on them. I think that anything that we do with intentions out of love and is pure will never go wrong. And it's something basic. It's a basic art. I don't think it has to be rocket science, because if you do slip up and do something, if it was said out of love or done out of love, it's easier to, one, educate Nobody wants to educate you after they feel completely offended and they don't know what your motives were. But if your motives are coming out of a space of love and you were loving them and respecting them, I think that education process and turnaround is much quicker.
Thank you. Coach Watkins, how about you?
I think Tori hit it.
You didn't even give me time to get muted and unmuted there. All right, I can respect that. Coach James, anything to add?
I think she hit the nail on the head.
We'll just keep rolling. Coach Perry, anything to add?
I would say the same, but just from the concept of treat each kid as if that was his own kid and give them the experience that he would want his kid to have if, they were on a team, and being coached in a opposite situation. And so just kind of, what everyone's been saying, be really intentional about, it's not a one size fits all either. I'm going to treat all the Black kids this way. Really figure out their personality, their likes, their dislikes, really invest in them, in building them up and giving them the tools that they need for softball, of course, because that's respect. That's why they're there. Treat them, push them hard in softball and, demand and hold their feet to the fire in softball. But, on the human side, make sure that they have the tools that they need, to go out into the world and go out into their college careers or wherever, he's transitioning them into, and feel confident, complete, loved, secure in who they are. And I don't think I've said this already, and if I have, please forgive me, but I am not a fan of I don't see color, like that statement. For me, I want you to see my color. I'm a Black woman, and just love treat me well, even though I'm a Black woman, or treat me well as a Black woman. I know what people mean when they say that, but I'm personally not a fan. I'm a Black woman from Louisiana. Like, you wouldn't dismiss any of those things. I'm a softball coach. You wouldn't dismiss any of those other things about me. So why would you have to dismiss that I am a Black female, that I'm a Black woman, that I'm Black? So, embrace it and, help those kids to love who they are, have confidence, again, so that they can go out and compete and with anyone else and feel good about themselves and overcome the challenges that they're going to be faced with in this world.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next question. Just a couple more as we wind down here. What do you feel is the most important thing for white people and leaders to do right now? Coach Wiggins, you want to start this one?
Listen and to be honest with themselves and with their colleagues, their administrators, and try to find a way to really make change. It's just about everybody realizing that it's about the human race and there needs to be change made. I did wanted to talk on that other question about the white coach and the players for a second, because I've experienced that a lot of the coaches take the Black athletes and they put them in more than one and two positions, so they never learn or master a position. And by the time they come to college, because they're so athletic and they catch on real quick, they use them with speed, they use them here, they use them there, and when somebody's not there, they use them there. So they never get to master or learn a position so that they can claim it when they get to college. And then we have to start from the bottom up, teaching them the position again. It happens a lot with the Black athletes.
Thank
Sorry.
you. No, I'm glad you chimed in. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's go, Coach James. Thoughts on what's the most important thing white people, leaders, coaches need to be doing right now?
First thing, educate themselves. Take a look at yourselves first and find out where maybe you might have a couple of biases that you've never really taken a look into. And then what you can do is have a real meaningful conversation with your team, knowing you have already assessed yourself. It's a lot easier to have that conversation and allow them to see those things when you've actually done it for yourself. And a lot of times that's not done. And that's the way you can have a true conversation. The worst, let them say what needs to be said. And you can, like we have all been saying, you listen, you learn, you're educating yourself, and take a look at all those things that's out there for you. Olivia put together a great list of things. And I mean, even for myself, I've been looking at things and seeing things that I didn't know. But, acknowledge that it's there, have that true conversation, and help yourself grow so you can help your student athlete grow.
Thank you, Coach. Olivia, how about you?
I think everybody hit it on the head, but I do agree. I think that we as coaches, I think Tori actually said it, we're so quick to like ask somebody for a hitting drill and whatnot. And I think we can do the same here. There are coaches of color. So if you do need help, if you want some advice or any suggestions, you can, I'm talking for everybody, but you can feel free to reach out to me. But I think that education comes first. It's just like if I'm going to talk to a pitcher, I'm not going to just talk to her and say, hey, you need to fix this if I don't know anything about it. She's less likely to listen to me. She's less likely to care. So I think that education and educating yourself first is key. And then actually having a conversation with others that are different, so that way you can also hear their point of view, and then reassess yourself, and then have a conversation with your team.
Thank you very much. Coach Tyson.
I'm going to kind of piggyback. I mean, just the name I think of, I've had so many conversations with Stacey Dukeman, and I've always been a fan, but just my love for that woman, and I'm excited for where she stands in the sport, because one of the first conversations is when you go to ask for help, and it is listen, like Wiggins said, but most importantly, like listen to really receive. Don't listen to check it off your list. They're like, all right, I called one of my Black peers and like I knocked it out. Like really receive something and get better from it, because I think acknowledging biases that you had kind of come out of those conversations. And I know for me, being as a Black woman in leadership right now, I know that I got to make that a safe space. So I've had to take a lot not personal, and I'm not, right? Because I can't give information once you feel, like in any way, like what you're guilty for how you felt. And I think what we want is just a change in behavior. And I think that as much as this stuff that you can go research, sometimes how to treat us in this sport, this is our area, our arena. That may not be in a book. We're probably going to be your best resource for that. And so ask like true, genuine questions and stand for something. One thing I've kind of just been seeing happening is like everybody like put a black box but had no idea what it meant or anything that was going on. Like really ask that hard question, and really dig down deep into it, so that when you do speak to your team, it's meaningful. You've acknowledged the things within yourself that you want to grow at. And I think that all of our student athletes grow from our vulnerability. So I hope that the people I've had conversations with, we kind of had aha moments, and they've laughed and they've giggled. I know I had it with Coach Ravel. And I hope that those conversations then go to your student athletes, that I too am guilty of this, or something like that. I think that that's how this is the only way it's going to get better. And we may not be able to change the world with the people on this phone call, but we can change our community. And there's power in that, and changing our community starts with acknowledging things that we want to get better ourselves.
Thank you. And Sharmell, your thoughts on what's important right now for white leaders, white coaches?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. And again, I would echo what the wonderful panelists have said already, but there are a few things that I think are really important. One, I think that leaders like myself have to make diversity, equity, inclusion a priority. We always talk about how diversity and inclusion and equity is so important, but the actions don't prove it. So we got to put our words to action. We got to not just speak about it, we got to be about it. Second, we got to hire people of color. We got to diversify our staffs. That's really important. If we want to grow and learn, if our white leaders want to grow and learn, they got to surround themselves around people that look different than them. So there's got to be more people that look like me in roles of leadership. And then I would say that, that networking piece is really critical. Understanding from others, learning from others is really important. And lastly, I just want to say that it's exhausting when I feel that I have to carry the burden of helping everyone understand how to navigate through these difficult times. And I want to say thank you to my coaches that are on this Zoom call right now, because they're on it to learn, but they're also on it to support me. And I'm going to, call one out. I'm not going to say her name, but she intentionally reached out to me and said, I'm here for you and I want to be better. And I see her right here in front of me, and it's I'm grateful and I'm appreciative that I see my coaches participating today, because that means a lot to me, and it means that they're trying to support me in my efforts to help our institution be better. So thank you.
Very cool. Thank you very much. Last question here, and this is kind of a question, and then I'd like to ask for any other statements you want to make, anything you think we've forgotten, anything you didn't get to that you feel is important. The question is, what advice would you give to a coach who's afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to use the right terminology, afraid to use wrong language, whatever it might be? What piece of advice would you give them as they start to navigate this conversation with their team? And then my question to you in your closing remarks is, to go ahead and tell us what we need to know as those who are listening on this call and here to learn that you might not have gotten to. So you can take both questions, you can take one, whatever it might be. Thanks for sticking with us as well. I know it's 9:40 Eastern time and you guys are just chugging along. So thank you very much for continuing this. We're going to keep it the same. We're going to go alphabetical order around the horn. So Sharmell, you get to go double header here, back to back. What advice would you like to pass along?
Yes, thank you. And thanks again for having me. I would say that, you got to get over the fear. Fear is intended to keep us from connecting with one another. And so when you say I'm afraid, I'm scared, really it's just saying I'm giving myself an opportunity to not connect with someone that is different, or to not ask the tough questions, or to not express what fears I have. So got to get rid of the fear, take the lid off of the fear and expose what it is that's keeping you from connecting with people that look different than yourself, and begin the growing, getting on a path of growth. Because I tell you what, it's a beautiful thing when you let get rid of the fears and you learn that those things that you most feared are not anything that you should have feared in the first place. So, get rid of the fears and just allow yourself to be who you are, where you are, and begin getting on that path of growing.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to call you Coach Greene, because once a coach, always a coach. And you've coached several of us during this call. So thank you very much. Coach James, you're up.
I'm going to say basically the same thing, but something we always tell our kids: get comfortable being uncomfortable. And part of what we do is that. And fear, there's a lot of fear in what we do. So you know what? You do have to face that fear. If you don't face that fear, you can't expect to grow. And that's something that we all strive to teach our kids, and they hit that point. So you know what? It's almost like we're the student when it comes to this. And don't be afraid that you're going to say the same thing, the wrong thing. If you're speaking from your heart and you're approaching it because it's something you truly believe in, it will come out the right way. And that's something you got to understand. If they know you're coming from a place of love, then you won't say the wrong thing, because they'll know what you truly mean.
Thank you. Coach Perry.
I think that is a very important question that you posed, because I can't tell you how many times verbatim I've had talked or had conversations with my colleagues at my school, white colleagues, or people in the sport, maybe some of the people on this call, with that exact question. So I would again co-sign on everything that was said already, but also just say, seek a position of empathy. When I see George Floyd on the street with a white cop's knee in his neck, I see not just George Floyd, I see potentially my brother, my father. When I hear about Breonna Taylor, when I hear about Ahmaud Arbery, I mean, one of my best friends runs, through the streets of Georgia, and those things really resonate. And I was talking to one of my longtime white friends. We were really getting into it, just talking about this whole thing, like not getting into it, but really having a real meaningful conversation about everything. And I asked her, have you talked to your parents about this? And she was like, well, no, they're doing this or doing that. And I just said, well, just to give you perspective, my family, we can't stop talking about this. Like, we don't have the choice to not discuss this. Whereas you can kind of go on with your life and other things. And I have a group chat with 13 of my siblings, my brother-in-law, and we're all professionals, several degrees on that chat. We're all in different places in the country. And we are, after this call, I'll probably have 52 messages, in regards to just, what's going on in the world today, with George, Breonna, Ahmaud, and so many others, Tamir Rice. And, just keep the main thing, and know that we don't have a choice as Black people to not talk about this, because it does affect us every single day. And, use your platform, as a white person, to seek a position of empathy through education, just through love, through communication. If you saw that and you felt bad and you wanted to reach out to someone and you had to go through your contacts and kind of find someone of color to reach out to, and then it was awkward, reaching out to that one person that you had in your phone, then, I would again recommend seeking relationships within your own circle, so that you can experience the ups and downs of life, and just the differences, create a meaningful relationship with other people, so that when these particular conversations come about, or a person of color is on your team, again, you're coming from a real space, from a real experience. And I cannot thank you guys enough, NFCA, for, just all that you've done, not just with this conversation, but I know personally, I always feel super connected, in the way that you guys reach out, and, that you've created this platform for us to kind of talk and connect, and just everyone hanging in there, staying on this call, having so many people that are interested in connecting and affecting change and joining together. I can't tell you how many text messages I've gotten during this call, just of support. So I do want to thank you. And if you were that person that had to go through your phone and reach out to that one person in that awkward manner, then it is a start, and as I personally recognize that, so I'm not condemning that, that's a start. But just take a real note of, hey, I don't, my circle's not diverse enough. And it's going to be, again, to my benefit, to everyone's benefit, just to branch out and reach out a little bit more, to embrace the Black experience, so that I can be a part of the change that needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you. Coach Tyson.
I personally think that the biggest fear shouldn't come from what you what you're gonna say. I think the biggest fear should come from what you haven't said, and the players that have already gotten away, and the assistant coaches that have already gotten away. That's like the biggest fear that we should have. And I think we should be empathetic that this fear and uncomfort that you've been dealing with for 2 weeks, just look to your left and right, because we've been dealing with it our entire life, right? Like that fear, that insecurity to speak, and not know how to say it. So we, understand that we are all we're all at different phases of our uncomfortableness and of our fear, but we all are fearing something. And I think that when you look at it that way, I think, and you look at, like Tyra said, and you're empathetic about that, I think that makes having that conversation a little bit more easier, because there's nobody that's sitting here not afraid. I actually think we're all like, God, the world is divided. I think we're all, for the first time, extremely uncomfortable. And so this is the time to reach out and talk. There is not one person, Black or white, that is comfortable, that is not afraid. So speak. And you can't change behavior that you don't talk about. So you have to be honest and you have to put it out there.
Thank you very much. And just a couple more people here to go, but I just want to call attention to all of you sharing your contact information in the chat. That's amazing. I just want to thank you for everybody who's willing to say, talk to me and continue the conversation. I just think that is very cool. Just wanted to throw that out in case you hadn't seen it, and we're looking for some opportunities for future connection. Olivia, Coach Watkins, let's hear from you.
I love following Tori because she just gets it. So I echo everything that she says, but I think about like that fear. I think it is the first time that we're all uncomfortable. And I think it's the first time that some of us are going to have these conversations. But I think that the first time you do something, you're always going to have fear. So I don't think you should focus on being too perfect with it. I think that if you're being real and you're speaking from the heart, I think that they will know that you're being real. So I think that will take care of itself. But I do not think that you should be afraid to have this conversation because you are scared to say the wrong thing. I think you have that fear of, again, like Tori said, like of not saying something. But I do think that it's new, so it's okay. But I don't think that you should have fear in doing something that is brand new because it's necessary.
Thank you very much. Coach Wiggins, take us home.
All right. Being uncomfortable is growth. It's so it's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable. It's nothing wrong with having fear, especially when you want change and when you're sincere about it and it's for love. I want to share one of my alumni shared something on social media. She is a tall, dark-skinned, Black African, beautiful young lady, but she was adopted with the state, and she was adopted in a white family. And she said they asked the question, when was the first time you remembered anything about racism? She said she was 8 or 9. And she said she was playing with her friends, and they're friends to this day. And one of them said, they were talking about boys, and one said she couldn't date Black boys because her parents told her they were bad. And she looked at her skin and she said, I'm Black. And then she said that was the first time she felt indifference. And she said she went on and how she used to get all these, I can be friends with you, but I can't be friends with them because they are bad. And she was hear this all through school. And then she got in high school, and she liked this boy, and she thought he liked her, and he embarrassed her in front of everybody, say, I like you, but you're too dark. And that was the second time. And then she went on, said, and her a senior come up to her and said, you need to stop acting like you're white. You'll never be white. So I need you to picture that. And she said when she got to college, she said she wasn't mad at them. What she was mad at was her skin. She did not want this skin. It's just how bad they had made her feel that her Blackness was wrong or was not right. She said when she got her freshman year in college, she was looking up stuff to bleach her skin. And she said the first time she walked on at HBCU school and was the first time she heard a compliment of how beautiful her skin was at an HBCU school. And she told her friends, would you believe they complimented me on my skin tone? So it starts when they're little and it goes to, and you don't realize how you hit the core of a Black person, the way you make them feel like they're less. And that's what's going on now. So some way we have to build that back up in all of our African-American people, if that makes sense. I just wanted to share that, you guys, because it did hit home. All right, Joanne, finish.
That's very powerful, Coach. Thank you very much for sharing that, and thank you all for sharing your time, your resources, your experiences, your advice. We just really appreciate you as members and helping us grow. And we have 300 people sign up to listen, and more than 200 on, and it's great. And so we just thank you very much. For the 157 of you that stuck with us for 118 minutes, whatever it is, thank you very much. Thank you for the commitment to your team, to yourself, to your growth, to the sport, to society, and everything else. But a huge, 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 huge thank you to the panelists. So Sharmell, Nawala, Tyra, Olivia, Tori, Veronica, thank you so much. We appreciate everything you've done. So thank you guys very much. Anybody that you want to send this to, you want to make sure they see it, you want to watch it again, it will be in your coach's box, and it will also be on our webinar page. This one is open to everyone. No membership required, no login required. Please share. We hope that it helps. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night. And thanks again to our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good seeing you guys.
Thank you, Coach.